Hey, BJ here with Business Coach Mastery with a free training for you all around the top 10 questions that you should be asking business owners when you are in that relationship building phase, when you're in that building rapport and you're getting to know them. You might even call the prospecting phase. Here's something really important right out of the bat. I get this question all the time, and there's three areas that you have to solve in starting and growing a business coaching business if you're going to be successful. One, what does the whole process look like in that whole leads and prospects? In other words, what am I going to say? Where am I going to go do this? How am I going to get prospects? The second thing is, how am I going to convert them into ongoing, high-paying monthly clients? And then the third, that is, how am I going to coach them in a simple, step-by-step manner? All right? You got to solve those things. So in the very beginning, which, I like to use the three-legged stool approach. In the very beginning, that leads and prospects, it's really about value, relationship building, and rapport building. Okay? So the question is, how do I do that? What does that look like? And I want to kind of paint you a picture to shift your mindset from probably what you have either experienced, you've been told, or you just may assume. And it all has to do with value. Meaning, I want you to shift your mindset away from the whole sales process mindset to a values-based, to a service-based, to a serving-based mindset. Now, let me be very clear. Everything in life has a measurement of selling, right? I mean, a sales process is kind of the root of really anything. I have 3 kids. My youngest is 13. And still to this day, she loves ice cream. She constantly asks, hey, can we go get ice cream? And she looks at me with those beautiful eyes and gets that look on her face that she knows that her dad will probably fall prey to, right? And that is a form of sales. But in a world where you're building clientele and you're going to help, especially as a Christian business coach, you're going to help a business grow their business. If you really want to be successful, have long-term, ongoing, high-paying clients, you have to do it in a way where it's not a sales process in your approach and how you come across. It really is a serving, values-based. And it starts with your approach, how people feel when they're around you, the sense that they get, the integrity and the validity, even the, from the feeling of you are interested in them and not just making a sale and getting a client. And that's what they feel all the time, because the market is flooded with all kinds of businesses making the attempt to sell. Look, we all know what we're doing. We all need clients. We all need to make money. And a lot of us need the services of those that we're interacting with, you probably do need pest control services, but you might not want to have to hear a pest control pitch, even though you need it. And so it's the whole, everybody wants to buy and nobody wants to be sold unless there is the transition of value. So, where does that start? Well, it really has to do with how you're interacting with an individual. And so for today's purpose, I don't care if it's a referral that you're talking to. In other words, somebody that you got to know through someone else. If you met them at a networking event, if you met them at a trade show, or even if you met them at a ball game, or at Starbucks, or the gas station, doesn't matter. In the relationship building phase, as you're shaking someone's hand and you're getting to know them for the very first time in your life, you're setting the tone. And you can do that from a values-based perspective versus a selling perspective. A selling perspective, they're going to feel and they're going to walk away from feeling like you're in it for yourself, for what you're trying to accomplish for your goals. A values perspective is that you're in it because you're interested in them, that you truly care about them, and you want to help them succeed and you want to help them grow. Big, big difference. And you get the power to choose of how you want to develop yourself as a successful coach when you're leading with value and the things that come out of your mouth. All right, so 10 things, top 10 questions. I'm going to go over a few of them, but somewhere either in the description of this email, maybe in the or in this video somewhere, because this can be seen in a lot of places. There'll be a link to a Google Doc with the top 10 questions to engage with a prospect. In other words, someone who you're building a relationship with that eventually you're going to take them to the next phase and convert them into an ongoing client, depending upon how you do that in your system. We have a system with our coaching team to where we do that in a very unique way using specialized software, which we can talk about another time. So question number 1, what inspired you to start your business? Like, that's a question. If I was engaging with you, you owned a business, let's say you owned a roofing company or you were a dentist, I would just be curious. Because part of this is a genuine curiosity of learning about them well before, because you may get to talking with them and they may not be the right fit for you. So rather than leaning into the sales process, we want to just engage, ask great questions, build some relationship, and at some point move them on to the next step if they're the right fit. So what inspired you to start your business? Like, what's that story? What's the behind the scenes? People like to talk about themselves. You like to talk about yourself. We all do. I like to talk about myself. And so when you prep the relationship with great questions, they're going to engage and they will respond. All right. So what are the core values that drive your business? Here's a great way to ask a question like that. Let's say that you probably have seen this before. Let's say it's an HVAC company and you've seen maybe one of their service vehicles, or you've seen something where there's something values driven on there. You could ask a question like, it sounds like values are really, really important to you. So what are those core values that drive your business? It's a great question, especially when you know something about them that would lead you to believe that values really do matter. They're using it in their marketing. They're using it on their website. Again, they're using it on vehicles. This is one of my favorites and things like this, because it doesn't matter what kind of economy that you're in. This will always work. So what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing? Or you could ask it like this. Well, what's one of the number one challenges that keeps you awake at night? In other words, when you put your head on the pillow, that you've got angst there. So as you're asking these questions, using imagery, using story, because a lot of people in life, they understand fully exactly what it means to struggle to fall asleep. So when you connect that to an emotional, and this is just in this kind of question, you're likely kind of scratching and touching an itch of challenge, of problem, of angst. And it's a great question to ask that you're going to probably get a lot of feedback, right? So I'm curious about you and your business. There's quite a few. It's probably a crowded market for you here with your HVAC business. So is that fair? Yeah. So what do you think? What differentiates you from all of your competitors? In other words, why would someone be crazy not to choose you over someone else? Like, what's the differentiator there? It's a great question. I'll tell you why. It's another thing about asking great questions. Sometimes when you ask these questions, it causes them to pause because they don't know the answer, and they're wondering why they don't know the answer or why they've thought about it. Why is that important? Because when you're the one asking those questions, and one of my favorite things is when a business owner says, "That's a really good question." What's actually happening here is psychology. They're beginning to lower their wall. They're beginning to lower their barrier of how they think about you, of how they perceive you as a problem solver and someone who can actually help them. And this is all just psychology. They may not be actually thinking those words. They may not say those words, but it's happening, especially when they say, "That's a really good question." And when you're getting those kinds of signals, you need to keep your mouth closed and just let them talk. You're in the relationship building phase. And I don't care if this goes on for only 3 minutes or for 30. It's really important because you are setting the tone. Let me ask you about your business. Congrats on owning it for 20 years. So you have to have, at this point, really got that sense of what's rewarding in your business. What is that? Like, if you could just focus on one thing and it's the rewarding part, what would it be? Because that's a great question to ask a business that's been around for a while, because they've gone through highs and lows and they understand their biggest challenges and their biggest wins. Great question to ask. Hey, if I were to ask the question about balance, and this is a little tricky, but when it comes to work-life balance, how do you manage that in your world? So when you're asking questions, you want to, again, you don't want to make them so analytical and just black and white. You want to humanize the process. Imagine if you and I were sitting down at a coffee shop, right? Like, part of my body language by design, as I've done this for more than 2 decades, is that even the way I present myself in asking the questions will set the tone of an environment. So if I am, if you're right here, we're together, and I'm like, very square in my presentation, it's not very inviting, and it's not going to loosen them up to really want to go deep with you, or at least be super vulnerable, we'll call it that, in the answers. So oftentimes, I'm very much, laid back. I might have, my coffee cup in my hand, and, sometimes I rock or, do this. And this is not manipulation. This is called being relaxed, setting the tone, and creating an environment that fosters connectivity and community. And so, again, if I was, talking to you at a gas station, I'm going to present myself in a manner that creates a way that you would answer these questions and want to answer them so that we could build rapport together. So I go back to, if I'm asking a question like work-life balance, I'm not just going to say, hey, I'm curious, how do you handle work-life balance? Like, that's a very cold way to ask a question like that if you think about it, the answer can be very vulnerable, and it can be painful, because the answer may be that they're not doing it. So you need to make sure you're processing and really thinking about the questions that you're asking, because it's really, really important that you set them up in a way. So if I'm asking a work-life balance question, it's going to go like, or for me, it's going to sound something like this. Now, I have a question about balance, and I want you to think about this, and it might be a little difficult to ask. So feel free to just share what you want to share and don't share what you don't want to share. In a world of screens, and we're getting text all the time, emails all the time, called all the time, around the clock, it seems like we've made ourselves available all the time. And regardless if your kids have left the home, or if you still have kids at home, or your grandkids, whatever the case may be, balance, especially as a believer, balance is really important. If I were to say the term work-life balance, what does that mean to you? And what are you trying to accomplish? And are you there, or is it a journey? Like, what is work-life balance? Are you achieving it? How are you achieving it? Or how are you working through it? Now, you see how I answered that question? I answered it by really giving imagination, or I asked it, I should say, about giving imagination, about really pulling out of them so that they would kind of get their gears thinking. And that's the way you ask great questions. So when you're saying a question like, so what inspired you to start your business? If you don't just always leave everything just black and white. So, congratulations on this business. I'm sure there was something that led you to this, that really inspired you, that gave you this energy to want to do this. Like, what was it? And it's funny when you ask questions like that and you set them up that way, sometimes they answer and they're like, actually, there was no inspiration at all. It just kind of happened. And it's a great way to just have a chuckle, right? Have just a moment of laughter. So prayerfully, you get the idea that when you're building a relationship, the value that you're adding, that even in the questions, and I'm not suggesting, by the way, that in your questions you ask all 10 of them. You may only ask 2. But my bigger point is to be prepared with these 10. Pull out story and imagination as you're asking questions, Don't interrupt. Don't speak. Let them talk. And when you do, you're going to learn a lot about them. They're going to feel very connected to you and feel like you truly care when you really do. Authenticity always will win out. If you're not authentic, they're going to feel it. It won't go anywhere, and you won't build any rapport and moving kind of the opportunity to get them to the point of requesting to help them with their business, which is another conversation. I hope this helps regardless of where you are in your coaching journey. People ask all the time when it comes to success of a coach and consultant. It is by far, my experience, I'll say it that way, that those who lean in building value versus lean in selling someone, there's no contest. And I would encourage you to practice this in a way that it becomes your lifestyle. Practice this in a way that questions just roll off your tongue in a natural format. That it becomes so ingrained in your DNA that it's not really even, it's just normally what you do. How do you do that? I'll leave you with this today for this training. You do it all the time. You do it all the time. And I ask questions everywhere I go. If we go to a restaurant, and even if it's just the server, and they don't own the business, I still ask them questions about the business. I'm just curious because I do want to know, because the more I know, the more I grow. But it also keeps me in the game. And so the more you just begin to ask questions, regardless of who you're working with, it's just going to put you in a position to be natural when you are in this phase of relationship building. And I say phase, you should always be in this phase. Whether you're just starting out or you're 10, 15 years in, you're always going to be relationship building at some level. Before you know someone, as you know someone, and as you're coaching someone, you're always going to be adding value by asking questions, asking great questions, giving imagery and story. I hope that helps. All right, until next time, take care.